So let's talk about luck in wargaming. And how do we create luck? Can we create luck in wargaming? Power perceived is power achieved. And then the meta math behind it. The math hammer. No theory hammer, math hammer. But a little bit of theory hammer first. A couple of editions back from Warhammer 40,000, the gaming group that I played with, we would play regularly a couple of times a week. We'd go to tournaments together, and we primarily played, for the most part, the same army. I mean, a number of us did own multiple armies, but at the time, I'd say, 80% of the time I was playing my jet bike Eldar, and the rest I was playing my Necrons. This idea, when I was playing my Eldar, the most used unit was my Seer Council. Now, Seer Council is basically, think of space elf magic users riding on jet bikes with magic swords, led by a grand magic user. And they would kind of go around and tie up units and engage stuff, and they could kill a variety of stuff. And they were, for the most part, pretty resilient. They got an armor save based on the jet bike. They got an invulnerable save at the time based on their space elf runes and magic, and they could hit pretty hard. So I used this unit very aggressively, and out of all the units in my army, not that the other units were doing nothing, but this unit was getting the most play. This unit was the one that my opponents were most familiar with, and I was the most aggressive with in utilizing. Most of the time, they did the job they had to do. They'd go in, they'd tie up some units, they'd cause some damage, they'd hit and run. Eventually, by mid-game, they'd be destroyed. But at that point, they had created enough space for my other fast-moving units to exploit, or gotten me enough victory points or battle points that I could kind of run and gun and hide, or get me to turn 5 and see what happens at that point. But every now and then, interesting things would happen. I'd get hit with a template weapon, a D weapon, right? This massive weapon that would just blast all of them. Plasma cannon from a Baneblade tank. And it's like, well, Fritz, you got to roll 5s and 6s for them to save, right? Invulnerable save. It's like kind of like a magic ward save. And out of 5 or 6 jet bikes, you'd lose a bunch. There'd be a couple of times I'd make all the saves. You'd be like, what the heck just happened? Another time in a key game, it came down to this final thing. I was getting smashed by a bunch of Terminators, and I took losses, and I had to make a leadership test. Otherwise, I'm going to run. I'm going to run away, and these Space Marine Terminators are going to capture the center of the table and win. You put the modifiers for leadership, do all this and that. I needed a 3 or less. This is on 2d6, 3 or less. And I just casually rolled the dice and got a 3. So this framing narrative is, with this unit, because it was the most used unit in my army, and it was in your face, and it got the most play, when those crazy things would happen, just luck of the dice, random luck of the dice, people would remember it. My opponents would remember it. Players from tournaments that I'd play a couple of times a year, they would remember it. And I started to get a reputation as like one of the luckiest guys around. Just absolute craziness to the point where sometimes people would be like, Fritz, you're just too lucky. Now, I just believe you roll a D6, you roll a D6. So there'd be some key game moments at the time to see if a game ends or see what happens with the scenario, where it would be my place in the rules to roll it to see what would happen. But I had such a reputation for being a lucky bastard that I would be like, go ahead, dude, you could roll the dice and see what happens. Roll for me. So this way, we can't say my luck is it, because some players were like, I lost the game just because Fritz is lucky. No, I kind of had some good tactics, but there was this perception of insane luck, like luck factor 10. It's like the old fantasy fighting game books. You roll up your character, you got like luck 16, and you're like, wow, that's insane. That's what it was like. So I would have them roll stuff, and it would pass. And they'd be like, I can't believe it. This guy's lucky and he's not even rolling dice. But when it didn't pass, no one remembered that. The times you smashed my Eldar army or my jet bikes or my Seer Council, you never remembered that. You remembered the crazy stuff. So this idea of creating luck and perception on the table, perception of certain units, that's one possibility. Thinking about how this idea of luck, power, if it's perceived, it's achieved. But let's look at the meta side right now, because that image takes a little bit of time to craft. And again, on a side note, there were some players that I played against. They were just damn lucky. They were just rolling dice. We were playing, I think it was one of the Northeast teams we were playing on and against for Warhammer. And when we were assembling our teammates, I'm like, we need this guy on our team. Like, I'll comp his room. We need this guy on the team. And he was a solid Warhammer 40K player, but he was lucky. He was absolutely lucky. And my other teammates were like, Fritz, we're going to get like this guy and because he's got this crushing army and we're going to do something. I'm like, we need this guy. We need this guy. And they were like, you're right. This guy's insane. Just lucky matchups, lucky army rolls, lucky everything. So how do we create luck? For most of us, Wargaming is a D6 based or a D10 based system. I would say a lot are D6 or custom dice like X-Wing miniatures, D8 custom type dice. Or looking at something like Pacific Rim, right? Custom D6 type system. The more dice you roll, the more lucky you're going to get. Now, a wargaming system has different levels of simulation where certain things are possible. You might have a low-quality troop with low-quality guns that if it shoots at something like a heavily armored unit, you might need sixes to hit and damage it. And then they might need to roll, I'm just making this up, 2 or higher to make their armor saves and armor adjustments. So you're looking and saying, am I ever really going to chew through them? Well, if you have 5 or 6 dice, how many 6s are you going to get? How many 1s is your opponent going to roll? But if I throw 20 dice, 30 dice, 40 dice, not physically throw, but if I make that many attacks, the scale system, the sliding system starts to break down. The more dice you roll, the luckier you will get, because all wargaming systems have these kind of weird and wacky combinations that they come up if you roll the dice. Units that tend to be in large quantities. Now, these type of units, of course, to get them on the table, and there are limitations based on your system. They're going to be conscripts, frontline soldiers, non-veterans, cultists, things like that. If I'm looking BattleTech, lighter mechs, things like that. The more you can get, the more volume of dice, the more possibility of luck happening. And that's going to feed into the other thing, because people are going to be like, I don't understand it. I marched my elite troops out and I felt pretty confident, because Fritz needed to roll 6s to destroy them. And my man was rolling like fistfuls of 6s. The thing marched out. He took out 10 in one turn. What the heck? Luckiest bastard on the table. Well, no, dude, I rolled like 50 dice at you. It was insane. Over the course of a turn with these 3 units, I rolled like 50 or 60 dice. So exploring and creating luck in wargaming, both as an image and also as kind of a math hammer to make that happen.